Adding special effects to your animations and your videos is where After Effects really shines. In this part of the exercise, we're going to be adding a variety of common effects into this animation. To get started, the first thing we need to do is let's clean up our layers. Notice that I've got a lot of different layers already opened. To quickly close all of these out, press the U key twice, and this will close out all of the stopwatch keyframes. The first effect we want to add is a particle effect of some bubbles. I'm going to move my current time back to 0 frames. These particle effects need to reside on a solid layer. To do this, let's go up to Layer, and let's create a new layer of a solid color. Now, the actual name of this won't really matter, but I'm going to call it Bubbles. We want to set the size of it to be the same size as our actual document that we have, so choose Make Comp Size, which it already is. The color of it won't really matter, so I'm going to keep it default of black, and we'll say OK. Notice when you do this, it adds a new layer that's red at the top of our Layers panel. The name of it is in brackets, and let's move this so that it's just above the foreground area. With the Bubbles layer selected, let's add an effect to it by going to the Effects and Presets panel. If you don't see your Effects and Presets panel, go to Window, down to Effects and Presets, and this will open it up, usually on the right-hand side. Now there's a lot of different effects, so we want to quickly find the Foam effect by typing in Foam at the top. Notice that this will automatically shuffle through everything until you get the one that you want. To apply the foam to the solid layer, you can click on it and drag it into your composition panel. This may take just a second, but this will start applying all the effects to it. Also notice on the far left-hand side, you get all of the controls for this effect. If we were to press play, this will give you a quick preview of what the foam would look like. You may have to zoom in or get close to it, but you can see there's a bunch of little bubbles emitting from this central point. These are all randomly done and as part of the effect that we're trying to go for. Now when these are rendered, they're all done in wireframe. Let's go over to this project panel and play around with some of the settings. The first thing we want to do is to twirl open the producer, and let's change the producer's point to the coordinates of 640 by 720. This will put our producer point down here at the very bottom. Now let's twirl open the Bubbles panel and set the size of it to be 0.2. This will give us some smaller bubbles to work with. Now let's twirl open the Physics panel and make these bubbles stick a little bit closer together. We're going to set their initial speed to be 5. Their wind speed needs to be 1. Their wind direction needs to be 0 over 0.00. Their velocity, or excuse me, viscosity needs to be set at 1. And finally, their stickiness needs to be set at 1 as well. And finally, twirl open the rendering and set the default bubbles texture from default bubbles to spit. Now, if we were to press play again, this would give us an idea of what the bubbles look like. But again, they're still in a wireframe format. So to see these fully rendered, at the very top of your foam effect, set the view from draft down to rendered. This may take just a moment for your computer to render it, but we'll place our scrub head back to the beginning and we can press play, and this will show us what our bubbles will look like once they're fully rendered. Let's zoom in so we can see it. Looking great. This is a good time to go to File and save your document. For the next effect, we want to change the color of our little shark. Instead of having him be so gray, we want to tint him to be a little bit blue to match the colors of the blue of the ocean. To do this, let's go back over to our timeline and select the shark layer on our timeline. With it selected, go to our Effects and Presets and type in Tint. Notice that you get two different kinds of tints. The one we want is the Color Correction tint. To apply this to our shark layer, even though it's got several layers above it, we're going to click on the word Tint and drag it down to the layer for the word Shark. This will now apply it, and you can see in our project panel where we can adjust the effects for this particular type of effect. In these controls, let's map the white by clicking on the color and typing in a specific RGB value. We'll set the R value to be 30, the green value to be 135, and the blue value to be 185. Notice this will be a particular tint of blue that matches the blue of our underground. When we say OK, this will change that. Since he seems a little bit too dark, we can also change the amount of tint. So let's bring this down from 100% to about 75%. And if yours is off by a little bit, that's okay. Now he's looking good. If we scrub back, you can see the entire image sequence is now tinted with a little bit of blue to it. This is a good time to save, so let's go to File and down to Save our project. The next type of effect is known as a displacement map. We want to add a little bit of a ripple, like everything is underneath of water. To do this, let's create a new adjustment layer first. We'll go up to Layer, down to New, and choose Adjustment Layer. Notice that this puts an adjustment layer at the very top of our panel. Now let's import some noise to add that ripple. Going back over to our project panel, if you don't see it, you can click on the double arrows and choose Project. Here it is here. We can go to File and Import. Let's import a file. The file we want to bring in our footage folder is going to be this noise movie file. This noise movie file, if you click on it to preview it, shows this random rippling that we want to apply this effect to. We'll say Open, give it just a second, and this will put the composition into our project folder. Now, we really don't want to see this noise movie, we just want to apply it to our layers. So I'm going to click on it and drag it to the bottommost layer of our layers panel, just below the background. Excuse me, if I zoom in, you can see where it's placed down here at the very bottommost layer. With this done, let's go to our Effects and Presets panel and type in Displacement. And locate the displacement map. Let's click and drag this displacement map onto our adjustment layer, Layer 1. Now let's play around with the settings. The first thing we'll change is the displacement map layer. We want to choose the noise move layer to be where we want to displace it from as its source. We can also use the horizontal displacement and set it to be luminance. We want the max horizontal displacement to be 7 and the vertical displacement to be luminance as well, and set that displacement to be 7. Now all of these are different things you would be playing around with if you were just adding this on here. From here we can press play, and this gives us an idea of what it looks like. Now you can see some ripples happening to our entire composition. Now there is one small problem, and you have to zoom in to see it. At the very top edge, you can see how it's displacing it, but I can see some of the black along the edges. This is simply because the displacement is scaling it in too much. So that's an easy fix. What we're going to do, let me zoom out, is go to our background layer, scroll down so I can see it, press the S key to open the scale options, and let's scale it up to be 102%. This will make our background slightly bigger, and it will trim off any distortion that we don't want to see. Let's also apply this to the middle ground. So with middle ground layer selected, press the S key, turn on the scale, and set it to be 102% as well. Now's a good time to save your composition. In the last part of this exercise, we're going to be nesting two compositions together so that they can transition.